Well, I'm going to go ahead and close out the table building process this episode, and have been sharing out for the last couple episodes how we have been building our country table bar for the kitchen. And, I tell you, it's interesting. It's almost like a year later when I started it. And then again, keep in mind that I do work around the weather around here. And it's important to know that if you're not working with the weather, you will lose. So we've got a lot of activities to get done, and thus, this table has taken a year. Now, I would tell you that I'm excited to share out this episode. It's going to be a long one, pre-warn you. Got a lot going on in it. We'll be jumping from element to element, but at the end of the day, it's really just closing out the tabletop and the substructure underneath the table, the legs and the skirt and what have you. So it's figuring out things, measuring it out properly, making sure that you have all of your cuts as you need to be. And then of course we're going to close out with staining and varnishing the table as well. So some activities frankly that I haven't done in a very, very long time. So it's going to be kind of interesting to share that out as well. So I'm going to go ahead and make my way here into the shop and start my next project that we'll be sharing out with you soon as well. So here we go. With all four sides milled of the tabletop, I'm going to go ahead now and start getting them down, each piece down to its final width. I had left it just a little bit thick so that I could review where we were at with the cuts and make sure that it was completely straight. So I noticed just a little bit of a wiggle on one side, and I've marked that accordingly. So I'm going to run those through, get those down to their final width, and then put them over on our table there to start working through how it's going to work out for the length. Make sure that we got the right ends and all that cut up accordingly. And then we'll move on to biscuiting them, gluing them up. I'm standing at our glue up station and about to obviously put the boards over here for the tabletop and start working on that. We will be biscuiting these boards together. So the glue up that you're going to proceed in a minute here is just going to have us, of course, cutting into the biscuits, putting them in play, then coming back with clamps, setting ourselves up with some cawls to make sure that the vertical as well as the horizontal is level. And so we're just going to glue it up right here in front of the fire. Towards me. Yeah. Okay. Okay, flip it over into the clamps. Okay. Okay, so we now have all of our cauls on and our clamps in, and we've put together 3 of the 5 boards. We're going to have to do this in 2 sections, as I said earlier. We're going to have to run it through the belt sander, which is 20 inches wide, and the belt, the table is 24 inches wide. So we'll be doing it in 2 sections and then merge the 2 sections together in the end. So with that, I think what we're going to do, obviously, is let this sit overnight and come back to it and pull off all the clamps and get it ready to go. One of the challenges of doing something in North Idaho in a wood shop is the temperature. When you're doing glue ups, you have to maintain a certain temperature per the bottle. It's 55 degrees. So we've moved our workstation here right in front of the fire so that we could get that nice heat coming over the top and blowing across. And as we measured it last night, it was running around 60 degrees in here in this section. You get to the far end of the shop, you're going to drop a good 10-15 degrees. So we've moved our whole glue up station over here in front of the fire so that we can obviously get everything to glue up properly. Time to glue up the table. So one of the things I'm going to have to do is sketch up our legs. Okay, obviously the tabletop's pretty simple, the skirt's really simple, but the legs are going to be a nice little cross action that I'm going to have to make sure that I sketch up before I go to milling the wood, get our degrees and our angles all correct. Normally you would use some sort of SketchUp tool on the computer to go ahead and draft this out. I personally do that on Excel as a regular basis, just being on the cheap, and it normally works out. However, the SketchUp tool would be probably the better tool for me to go ahead and use. I do a lot of freelance work on all things on the property, and to me, a lot of that is just naturally comes out of my person. But when you need specific cuts and you need those specific lengths, then a SketchUp tool would be the best one to use. I'm personally going to use that in the future as we get more and more into woodworking, but at the current moment, I'm going to freelance it today. So I'm at the drawing station right now, and I'm going to go ahead and draft it out. The legs, if you recall, are going to be 3 inches wide. And of course, the boards that I have are only about 1.5 inches wide after milling. So I'm going to go ahead and laminate them together so that it obviously produces that 3-inch board. So with that, let me go ahead and bring everything over. These boards are a bit longer and wider than what they're going to eventually be. Right now I'm just going to go ahead and glue them up to the rough, and then of course if there was anything extra leaning over the edges right here, when I go to rip them, they'll become one board. So one of the things I just have to do is just get them together and do that. Now of course on the other end of that, I'm going to go ahead and start making cuts on it and get the length right. Those degree cuts have been figured out by drafting it out. Now, what I'm also going to have to do is make sure that I have enough run here on the bottom that'll put a tendon into our foot. We've got that big beefy foot that is 5.5 by 3.5 by 24 inches. It's quite heavy. So we're going to go ahead and mortise and tender that together so that it gets, that strength that we're going to need to require. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start gluing these guys up. Today is all about our legs, and as a reminder, we have that X formation. So the first step is going to be do a couple sandings of the top and bottom. Then we're going to go ahead and cut down the 2 sides and make sure it gets an approximate size. Probably come back to the sander, do some sanding work, and then work on our mortise and tendons. Of course, the tendons is this piece here that we're going to get that elongated, goes into the footing. So there'll be some work on that part, and then get our angles right, and then work on ourselves the cut through the middle here so that we can joint them together, and then probably in the end go ahead and throw them through the sander one more time to get them all leveled out and cleaned up. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here with the sanding.
So from here to here, I'll be 2 inches. From here to here, I'll be 2 inches.
Well, the run will be different than 2 inches. So that's 2 1/4.
Okay.
So in theory, if we were on the bottom here, it should be right off that edge is 2 1/4.
Okay. But now we got to figure out the thickness, the height of the blade.
Right.
So if we got
Overall 3 inches, just short of 3 inches.
Okay, so it's an inch. It's a ½ inch on each side. So you got to set that
to 1/2 inch high. That will give you 2 inches in the middle.
But you're short of 3, so.
Yeah, it'll be just a little bit short. Yeah. Or do you? I mean, remember when we got done sanding, it was 295.
Right.
Which was good because we barely were able to cut this. So right now it's 2 15/16.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to put it at short of a ½ inch, 32nd short.
Right.
And do that first.
Yes, and you're going to make sure you get your 2 inches from your fence to this side of the blade.
But the miter's coming on this side of the blade.
Yes.
Yeah, it's on this side.
Yes.
North side.
good grip on it.
So moving forward here, we're going to go ahead and move on to doing a little mortising. We will start with the drill press to get that 2-inch to take out the bulk of the meat of the wood that we need to get the tendons into. So we'll go ahead and bore those out first and then come back here with the horizontal mortiser here and clean up as much as we can. Of course, eventually we're going to be into the chisel work. So today we're going to finish this off and hopefully get it all glued up and ready to go for putting together with the balance of the table. as I was just showing you, I was cutting up the pieces for the skirt, getting them to length, and then I glued them up. I didn't put it on camera, but I glued up the corners and made sure that, you know, obviously our corners best possible. A little bit of a twist in the board here, so I wasn't able to get it completely to perfection, but with some sanding, some cleanup and what have you, it looks great, ready to go. We're gonna go ahead and put some support boards in here on the inside because the legs will attach right here on the edge. So we're gonna have a board in here that'll we'll go ahead and biscuit and make sure that it's firmly in here. Then of course we'll have a couple stretchers in between to make sure that these don't buckle over time. And of course this other end will be the same as the prior. So today's activity will be about the skirt, getting it all fixed and ready to go. If we still have time permitting, there are those 1-inch pieces that'll go on top of the legs that'll fix to this and get this all put together. We might actually have the structure in place by the end of today. So let's continue working on and share that out with y'all.
Shove this in.
There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and use this Duragold Pure Gold Superior Tack Cloth that my dad purchased. And first time I've ever used it to remove the dust. So yeah, hey, let's try it out. It is always exciting to share out a project that's coming to its final stage, which is, in this particular case, the staining. I have a couple little things that you got to do for putting the tabletop onto the leg structure, and then also we got some footings we're going to put on. But this is the most exciting part, where you're going to stain it and then varnish it afterwards. So it's pretty cool. So what I've decided to go with is I've seen this on YouTube, and as always, I kind of look and go out there and find products that I think others are using that I would like to use. And this weather wash really kind of intrigued me. It plays with the tannins in the wood naturally, so it pulls out the colors that we were looking for in our home. So I just hey, listen, I tried it. It wasn't per se the cheapest item to have, but it seemed like it was easy to work with. Dry time's about 60 minutes. You hit it with an 80 grit ahead of time, and you go to work. So it's pretty simple to work with. I have already used it on a test piece, so I, not obviously using it for the first time on my project. So I did use a test piece of the same exact wood, and it came out exactly as we wanted it. So I'm excited to put it on. I'm gonna have to wait the 60 minutes and then flip the table over, and then another hour, and then I'll go ahead and take care of the legs. Only needed one coat on the sample piece, and I was happy with it. So I'm gonna apply it with a towel. We can apply it with any way you want to, from spray onto rollers onto whatever. But I like using the towel. You can actually squeeze it out, push it around some more, and it just works out really, really nice. I didn't feel like it was causing me any grief when I was doing it on the test piece. So hopefully here it'll do the same. So with that, I think I'm going to get to it and start breaking it out. Even though this is the bottom, I'm trying to get these holes covered up as best I can. And the reason behind that is simply I've got to learn, because there are plenty of other holes and parts that you're going to see. So I want to make sure that I've got those covered up, and think how I do that. Obviously, it's not overly hard to think of. You just have to give it a little squeeze inside the hole from the towel, and it'll come right out and go and fill the hole. But it's just something that you got to practice on. It's been a while. I haven't probably stained a product in, God, I want to say I could be pushing on 10 years at this point. It's been a long time since I've actually done a wood project of any size. So working this second side here, or should I say the top of the table, just trying to make sure that I'm not getting any blotchiness. Saw a little bit on the other side, but I don't think that was really anything to do with the stain. I think it was more to do with glue and that issue. So, but it looks good, and again, it's just a matter of preference. This is designed to be rustic, right? This is reclaimed wood with character, and that character cannot be perfect, because if it is, then it would remove the concept that you're trying to go for. Vertical pieces might be where this rag or towel will get me into trouble, because it's not going to be able to get into the sections as well. Maybe you just got to press into it. This section of the wood almost looks like bird's eye. Well, it turned out absolutely beautiful, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. The table has just a richness to it, and again, reclaimed wood is another plus to it all, right? We would like to use the wood again and again and again, and in this particular case, it works for us because, again, all this damage from nails is just plays right into the motif. Again, I bring up that word. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry overnight. I'm done for the night. And then tomorrow, Sherry and I will come out here. We'll flip it over onto its top so that I can do the bottom of the feet and catch anything else that I might have missed. There is a lot of little holes through here. In fact, some holes that go clear through that, you know, you can still see a little bit of that light brown in there. And again, that's not terrible either, because that's part of the whole concept as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. Be back in the morning. With everything stained on the table now, I'm going to move on to my varnishing. So I'm going to go ahead and brush it on. And it does require, I think, a little bit of sanding in between, although the product does not call for it. So I'll probably do a light sanding. Take this thing slow. This will be done over multiple weeks, actually, because, you know, I want to put on several coats, and I don't really want to sit around for a couple hours, then hit it, and then a couple hours hit it. So I'm going to go ahead and follow the rule that says that you got to wait every 48 hours before you can touch it if you miss that 4-hour window. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit it, and then let it sit here for 2 days, come back, hit it again, and just stay with that regimen until it's completed. So there will be several coats that I'll put on here. I probably won't do the inside too many times. I'll maybe hit it once, see what it looks like. Might hit it again if it looks, you know, like it's, you know, still kind of, you know, if you will, rough. But I probably will not do that. I'll just hit it with the once. But everything else is going to need 3 coats, and here we go. It's amazing how liberal you're going to have to be with the coating here. How much you have to put down, just the sheer size of it versus the legs. You're going to put a lot more material down to cover the wood, per se. In fact, it almost feels like you could pour it on and then stretch it accordingly. Of course, that's somewhat risky because you don't want to get too much on the product. You have to be careful with some of these holes so that they don't bleed all the way through, and put, you know, a nice little gooey little sensation on the other side. Wood is really, really dry. It's amazing how dry it is. Makes sense. It's been out there since the mid-70s from what we can tell. So it's exactly why you want reclaimed wood, is that it's very dry. It's already been made all of its moves, and so yeah, it's good to work with in that regard. I would say it's somewhat difficult to work with from just the sheer breakdown and breakout, right? So all the cracking and stuff. This particular, Doug fir that we believe it is pretty worn through and has a lot of knots and stuff like that. So it definitely does break down in that way, making it just a bit of a challenge when tear out occurs and stuff. The varnishing's been going great, and I'm at the very last step here of varnishing the very top of the table. So what I'll do is give it just a light rub over with the cloth to make sure I've picked up any dust. It's been sitting around for a couple weeks now, so it needs to be dusted off. And then I'll go ahead and put a couple coats on. It's really kind of sucking into the wood. You can imagine it's very, very dry. So The first coat goes on a little bit more like pulling it through. So I'm going to put a lot of varnish down, move it around, and then I'm going to go ahead, wait out about 30 minutes, and then hit it again. And then I'll let it dry out over 2 days. And then at the end of those 2 days, come back and give it a light sand and then hit it with its final coat of varnish. So that's the plan. Let's get to it. With me using the brush, I get a little bit of pooling going on in the locations where those nails went through. Some of them at a real kind of a horizontal level right through the wood itself. So, it makes a nice little groove into it. And that's, of course, why you like the piece, right? It's coming together really nice. It's really cool looking. But again, those little kind of divots and things of that nature, you're going to have to come back. Because when it dries, it will get a little bit white in it. Just to have a hint of white in it, you definitely don't want that. So I want to pull out as much as possible without it looking like I pulled it out with a brush. So yeah, a little bit of effort, just kind of making sure that it doesn't dry out with that white milk look to it. It's, it's on the border on this one here. Again, sometimes you can cause more damage by messing with it. So, gotta let it go somewhere, and then in other places you gotta make sure you pull it out. Well, coming in after a couple of days, it looks really, really good. It has dried up nicely, and it looks like there's no real, white marks anywhere from where it maybe pulled too much. So I think it's in good shape. It's time to give it just a bit of a knockdown with a light sand and go ahead and start revarnishing it for one last time. Okay, it looks like it turned out really, really good. I'm going to wait a couple more days and come back to it one more time to see if it looks right, if I'm feeling good about it. If I am, then I'm going to go ahead and move on to putting the pieces together, the feet, should I say, to the table itself with the levelers, and then of course also the connection pieces. They're going to go ahead and bind it to the table itself. Again, I'm going to go ahead and do that with the little connectors there that are going to slot in, so that if there's ever any movement with the wood, it doesn't damage the product. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out this section of the build. So we're ready for the final touches of this table, simply putting on the feet, the levelers, and putting on the pieces that are necessary to connect the top to the apron. Now, the reason why I'm putting on the levelers is obviously this is a large 5x5 footing that once it gets to the house, we wish things were all level and square and plumb, but they're not. So I'm going to go ahead and put some levelers on them. May not need them, but I'm going to go ahead and have it as a capability. Plus, when dragging this wood across the flooring, to clean or whatever, move, whatever it does happen, you're just going to scrape up your floor. So it's just better that I put these on. And in fact, I might go ahead and put some nice little velvet or whatever on here that it'll slide it across the floor. So let's go ahead and put them on. Pretty simple procedure. Okay, with the feet in, I'm going to go ahead and put these guys here, these little figure eights that are going to go along the edge here, put them in, screw them down, and then when we go to get the table inside the house, I'll come and put the other screw the other way. Again, if you look at this part, I guess I should get my finger out of it. you've got yourself the two holes, and one, they both have a flush so that you can go ahead and go from opposite directions. So it works out really nice. I don't really know which side's supposed to go in or out, the fat edge or whatever. I'm actually going to choose that the fat edge goes onto the table because it needs a more surface area. It's a heavier item. And then the other one will be underneath the table, so it'll help it be stable. This one will actually just be underneath the table. So both the smaller piece will be stuck between the two. I'm going to use a Forstner bit to get it cleaned down. Don't need to go down far. You're only talking about 1/8 of an inch at best. So I need that to be kind of flush. So just need to hit it just a little bit. So it'll be a little trial and error run. I have not done this before. I've marked myself out on my marks and where I'm going to go. And then I'll pre-drill the hole for the screw and screw in. So here we go. Yeah, I think the smart thing to do here is just be a hint lower so that make sure that it's gripping onto it and pulling in, so that if you've got it real flush, it may be that this guy is just a hair taller or proud of the table, or sorry, proud of the skirt. So then your table will be like, ugh. So I'm gonna go ahead and just a hint, not much, just a hint.